Greetings, my scattered brothers and sisters in the Lord. Trust you have been following Jesus and drinking well. Today we continue on. We move into chapter 8, and it's one of the more familiar stories in the Gospel of John. Jesus is teaching in the temple, and the leadership brings before him a woman who has been caught in adultery. And they question Jesus. It's a trap question. They say, Jesus, the law, Moses, commands that a woman caught in adultery should be stoned to death. What do you say, Jesus? Here's the trap. If Jesus says to stone her, to put her to death, well, then they can turn him into the Romans because the Jews did not have authority to put anybody to death. Only the Romans could do that. And so Jesus would be taking the law into his own hands. He would be transgressing the law of Rome. And so they could turn him over to the Romans. He would also lose public support in some sense, in terms of all of his compassion that he has shown people would all seem to be for nothing. But if Jesus says, don't condemn her, don't stone her, don't put her to death, then he can be charged with breaking and betraying the law of Moses, not being a faithful Jew. So they think they have a pretty good setup. They think they have Jesus trapped, and either way, they're going to get him. Well, Jesus stoops down and writes on the ground a bit. Nobody knows what he wrote. And then he comes back with this, that he who is without sin, let that person be the first one to cast a stone. Let the one without sin cast the first stone at the woman caught in adultery. One by one, they leave, beginning with the oldest first, on down to the youngest, and finally there is no one left before the woman. And Jesus asked the woman, where are your accusers? Is none left to condemn you? And she says, no one, sir. And then Jesus says these words. He says, neither do I condemn you. Go now and sin no more. Powerful scene, powerful story, powerful lesson. Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. When I hear this story referenced, most of the time it's referenced in terms of how there's no condemnation in Jesus. And truly, that's a valid point, that Jesus does not come to condemn the world. He comes to save the world. And he does not put this woman to death. He actually gives her new life. By the way, we have no idea who the man is. We don't know how this whole thing got set up. Obviously, the woman is in a trap herself. But Jesus finds a way to kind of get her out of the trap, as well as get himself out of the trap. And there's no accusers left. And Jesus says, then neither do I accuse you, neither do I condemn you. And so Jesus doesn't judge her. Instead, he sets her free. But we need to pick up on the last words of what Jesus says, and these are so often neglected. Go now and sin no more, or go now and leave your life of sin. And so Jesus is charging the woman to live newly, to live a new life in this freedom that he just opened up for her. And again, too often this is neglected, and we simply hear Jesus say, in a sense, no one can throw a stone at anybody because we've all sinned. We all fall short of the glory of God. And so we can't cast stones at anyone. And so we tend to use that as an excuse to do whatever we want to do, to live however we want to live. And hey, you're not without sin. You can't throw a stone at me. You can't accuse me. You can't condemn me. But Jesus didn't leave it there. Jesus told the woman, go now and sin no more. Leave your life of sin. We need to hear that we're not simply set free from accusation so that we can keep sinning and live however we want to live. we're actually set free so that we can live victoriously over sin, so that we can live a life of devotion to God and love for one another. Go now and sin no more. Those words are every bit as important as the first set of words, then neither do I condemn you. One more thing. I think we do have the responsibility to encourage each other and to challenge each other to live rightly before God and before each other. And the Pharisees, or the leaders in this story, they were bringing charges against the woman, not to somehow set her free, but to try to trap Jesus, and they'd already trapped her. We shouldn't be, simply throwing stones at one another to condemn, but we are responsible to encourage each other, to hold each other accountable, to pray for each other, to kind of spur each other on in a life of devotion to God, a life of love for one another, a life of holiness, a life of love. So, neither do I condemn you, and I'm so glad Jesus doesn't condemn us, but he charges us to go now and sin no more. And we can only live that new life in dependence upon Jesus and abiding with him, following him, drinking him. Keep drinking well, and you'll discover that he actually gives you power to love, power to walk in obedience, power to go forward victorious over sin. God bless. Have a great day.